Good morning, everyone. My name is Cassandra. I am happy to introduce Caverly Morgan this morning. Caverly is the founder of the organization that I work for, Peace in Schools. I work there as a mindfulness teacher. Peace in Schools is the country's first for-credit mindfulness elective. Caverly also is the founder and guiding teacher for the nonprofit Presence Collective. By way of announcements, I want to mention that on Wednesday evenings, through Presence Collective, Caverly offers a weekly meditation class. So this evening at 7 p.m. Pacific time, Caverly will lead a much smaller, more intimate gathering via Zoom. And I'll post a link for that gathering in the sidebar after Caverly comes on this morning. I do want to say, please give yourself extra time to register, just a few minutes before 7 p.m. if you want to attend that gathering. Also, Caverly wanted me to mention that for Europeans, if it works for you to attend the 7 p.m. Pacific time gathering this evening, please do. And also please know that if at some point she stops offering these daily meditations on Sangha Live, that she hopes to also offer something that's more conducive to Europeans during a better time via Presence Collective. The way this morning's our time together will work, same as all other days. There will be a 30-minute guided meditation followed by a question and answer period. If you are willing to come on screen to engage live with Caverly, please indicate that in your question. So you're welcome to write a question in the Ask a Question box under the screen or in the sidebar, but please do indicate if you'd like to come on screen. Also, please, if you are benefiting from these teachings and you have the ability to donate, Sangha Live relies on donations to support the work that they do, bringing the wisdom and teachers that they bring to us. So please, if you can, click on that green donate button below my face. And thank you so much in advance for your care in that way. One other announcement to mention is that the Science and Non-Duality Conference is happening now, and Caverly's talk is the last day of the conference on May 23rd. So if you'd like to still register, I know scholarships are available. I'll post a link for more information about that in the sidebar as well. And with that, I hope you enjoy this morning's time with Caverly, and I'll bring her on.
Hi, friends. Cassandra, thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate being here. And I appreciate your service, Cassandra. And, oh, my screen just went dark. I don't know. Okay, I'm back. I don't know if you all lost me for a minute. I lost me for a minute. There's a metaphor about practice in there somewhere. I love it. Love as clarity. Love as clarity, Richard Brandt. Hello, good morning. Thank you for writing that in. Verge, hello from Portland. Sophie, hello from California. Rivka, hello from Jerusalem. Thank you all for writing in. Kiki, hello from the Isle of Spice. Friends, I would love to hear a little bit more this morning from you before we move into the sit. I'd love to know how you're doing. What is one place you're working with or practicing with? Perhaps you're practicing with finding patience during this time, or you're practicing with remembering presence. Hi, Jem from the UK, Ellen from California. Tell me, before I move into this sit, I come in today just wide open and want to meet you. Where are you? What's alive for you? What are you practicing with? What are you noticing in your practice right now. Sophie, you're practicing with metta during this time. Lovely. Mimosa. Hi. Hi from the UK. Yeah, Joyce, finding presence and practicing not overreacting to situations. Great. Kiki, reassuring my inner child. Beautiful. I know we were talking about that. It's really been helpful to you. Good. Oh, thank you. Shakti in Berkeley. Need energy, inspiration, and soothing. Okay, self-compassion. Trying, great. Verge, letting go and allowing. Oh, good. Shakti just did a 5-day metta retreat. Yeah. Nikki, I'm unraveling the inner critic by doing Martin's I See You Mara course. Lovely. Great. Well, this is very useful to me. I would like to focus today's meditation then a little bit on our relationship to the inner critic and compassion. So Christine, trying to be compassionate with my experience and not put added pressure on myself to be reinventing myself, scrambling towards grasping at answers. Beautiful. Okay. Okay, lovely. Lovely, Charlie. Getting to know my luminous being. Love that. Beautiful and rich. So, friends, thank you. That's useful to me. Again, useful regarding my intention to meet you, to be with you during this time. Thank you for chiming in that way. Go ahead and take a moment, please. Part of today's meditation on compassion, love as clarity, as Richard started it off with. What be allowing ourselves to practice being clear about what's coming from the inner critic, and then the clarity of presence, the clarity of love, the clarity of finding compassion. Part of that we can begin with as a practice, compassionately attending to the body. So take a moment to maybe roll your shoulders or roll your head on your neck. Oh, Ellen, you loved yesterday's meditation. It was helpful. Okay, good. Working with Mara seems perfect. Lovely. Okay, this is helpful, friends. Yeah, keep talking to me about where you are and what's alive for you. Maybe especially if you are working from home right now and you're on the computer a lot, take a moment to open your wrists up. Mostly during this time when I pause in this way, I'm just inviting a listening to the body. So now I'm touching my feet, just for me, waking my feet up. You might have had a long day and you're actually just sort of thanking your feet. Great. Mimosa, more regarding the inner critic. Great. Great. Jan, learning to be with difficult emotions and situations without identifying with them. Friends, lovely. It inspires me to see what folks are up to. So listening to anything else that your body is requesting. And then maybe, I say maybe, because it's just an invitation, but taking 3 of the longest and deepest inhalations and exhalations you've taken yet today. Sometimes in these meditations, I move straight into recognizing the self-talk that might be present, straight into recognizing whether the inner critic is there, for example, yammering away about something. For this moment, let's go straight to the refuge of your very being. For this moment, don't worry about anything that's happening in the mind or the body. I note that I didn't say push it away or reject it. I just said don't worry about it right now. Simply go straight to the refuge of your very being. So if you are hovering somewhere, perhaps stuck in some conversation or story in the mind, in the conditioned mind, visualize taking an elevator down into the depths of your very being. This refuge of your very being. No worries at all if it feels difficult to access that today. Let the imagination play for a moment. Just consider a moment in your past in which you had the direct experience of just being. Perhaps you were resting in nature somewhere. Perhaps you were by a creek or resting on a beach listening to the waves. Perhaps you were in bed at the end of a full day, just feeling easeful. Perhaps it wasn't any specific place that you can tie in your mind, like in your hammock, relaxing. Perhaps it's just, there I was washing my dishes, but I had a sense of just resting in myself. things feeling okay or easeful. That's the being we're referring to today. This natural state, your true or authentic default setting. Sink the attention, drop the attention now into the refuge of your very being. It's that beingness when nothing else is going on. We all know this place. We all know this refuge of our very being. Even if we might say it's a place we don't spend much time or as much time as we would like. We know this place because it's the most intimate experience we have. It's ever present. Just simply rest now in that beingness, in this beingness. Establish this beingness as your refuge. And now from this refuge, from the seat of your own being, your own aware, luminous being, notice any internal dialogue, in particular the dialogue that might feel critical or negative. From this aware, luminous refuge, simply see thoughts floating like like clouds. There's a critical one. Simply notice from aware presence. Notice. There's that story about who I should be becoming. Don't identify with these creations. Stay resting in your aware being. Stay here. You don't need to fight these passing clouds. You don't need to resist these stories. See them, though. From the refuge of aware being. Allow yourself to stabilize in this experience of knowing yourself as this aware beingness, recognizing this being, this aware, luminous being as you. You are this verb. You are not the noun of body-mind. You are the aliveness of sensing, knowing, being. Notice that you, alive beingness, don't shut anything out. Naturally, it is your nature to not slam the door, even on the inner critic. The inner critic is not someone you need to be in relationship with. If you lock the inner critic out, you're in a dance. simply notice how you naturally, when remembering yourself as this aware presence, you naturally allow the inner critic to simply float through in the same way that you allow the compulsion, the conditioned compulsion to want to be someone, to simply float through. Or as Jan said, to allow difficult emotions and situations to float through. They are not you. You are not these difficult emotions and situations. You are not this negative self-talk. You are not that which has been ignoring the inner child. You are not the inner child. You are that which naturally embraces all of it, that naturally, in your very nature, sees, knows, welcomes all of it, whatever's arising. Returning to the refuge of your very being is the ultimate act of self-compassion. Remembering the refuge of your very being is a deep expression of love. Emerging with and in the very thing we all long for. We all long to know the refuge of our very being. We all long for the very thing that we are. We all long for the very thing that we are. Rest as this. All is welcome here. Friends, thank you. Thank you for your presence, for being. This is the moment in which I get to remind you about this green button right below me. I like that Cassandra said, right below my face. There you go. Green button. Please donate if you are able. Tell me, what are you present to? What do you notice about the refuge of your very being, the refuge of your very luminous, ever-present being? What's the role of the inner critic when you are establishing yourself as that presence? What life does the inner critic have when you know yourself as presence? Jan, yes, yes, yes to meditations about being, awareness, knowing who we really are, compassion, so very healing. It is healing, isn't it? Jan, I think it's what arises with your words now is that it's perhaps the ultimate healing. When we know our own being so intimately that we're no longer confused by the voice of the inner critic, for example. It's not just a band-aid to the part of us that's been getting beaten up by the inner critic, maybe the inner 4-year-old. To go back to what I've been in dialogue with Kiki about. Our very being naturally takes care of the suffering that's created from identifying, the suffering that's created when we identify with that inner critic. Joyce, yes, it's so nice to know that the inner critic is just part of life, that we don't have to ignore it. We just need to see it. Yeah, Joyce, I appreciate you underlining this aspect of the teaching, the seeing of it. It is, if we can't see the inner critic for what it is, we can be more easily confused that it's real, or that we are it, or that we are that which the inner critic is beating up. Thank you for naming that. Sophie, noticing a shift of the way I relate to everything that enters consciousness, noticing as a wave, then the separate entity to react to. Yes. Yes, it's so true, Sophie. Not only is everything entering consciousness, but Sophie, the next question, the next place of inquiry for you might be, and what else could what's entering be made of other than consciousness? So there's truly no division here. Sophie, I invite you to explore that and let me know what you see. All right, just to double check, if anyone would like to come on screen, I know it's been tricky lately, friends, but if anyone would like to come on screen, please write a note in that sidebar so that Cassandra could see that you'd like to come on, and she'll attempt to help you get on. Lynn, anybody who's thought about coming on recently but hasn't been able to. Julian, if you're with us today and you'd like to come on, that would be lovely. I know that there was a little bit of a dangling thread I wasn't able to get to yesterday. Matthew, thank you, Caverly. I noticed the critic falling away, not being pushed. Yeah, it's really important, Matthew. The pushing away of the inner critic actually strengthens the inner critic. Imagine a bully in grade school that's constantly getting a particular kind of pushback that just engages the bully, because the bully can see how much power he actually has. You say, Matthew, just falling away. An image of riding a bicycle, watching my shadow on the ground, impermanent. Beautiful image, Matthew. Just riding a bicycle, there's the shadow. We don't need to try to stamp out the shadow. We don't need to view the perfect bike ride as the ride that has no shadow. We don't need to attempt to outrun the shadow. Know the shadow is impermanent. Know the shadow is simply a shadow. That's good, Matthew. I might use that image again, if with your permission, this bicycle and shadow. It's a very good analogy. Spencer, I felt very uncomfortable entering that gathering of beingness. Felt unwelcome. Maybe not unwelcome as the feeling was from me, feeling unworthy, not from any imagined rejection from being. This was surprising, as I did not realize this old cloud still seems so formidable. Spencer, the place to explore in this moment is who within is defining beingness as unwelcome. Your very being is naturally welcoming. Oh, and Spencer, thank you. Cassandra, I just saw, again, friends, this happens sometimes in Crowdcast. It's just happened a couple times where my screen, it doesn't roll up. So Cassandra, thank you for texting me just now and letting me know that Spencer's willing to come on screen. Great. And Matthew, thank you. I just saw your note. So Spencer, lovely. Please come on screen. That's great. while I'm waiting for Spencer to come on screen. Jan, in the question box you wrote, I noticed that the second you suggested that we rest in the refuge. Yeah, beautiful, Cassandra. Thank you for inviting him. Have him come on any time. I'm just talking while we're waiting. I instinctively knew exactly what you meant and felt a flood of well-being. That well-being is your very being, Jan. Then several times during the meditation, I noticed something in me grasping too hard onto that. Beautiful, that's not you. How do I know? Your very being doesn't grasp. The ego grasps. That illusion, that activity of the separate self grasps. And thereby losing it. No, Jan, the beingness that you know, that lights up for you, that can't actually be lost. It can be veiled, it can be covered, it can appear to be hidden. But even the grasping of the ego doesn't diminish your very being. It cannot. In the same way that the shadow cannot stop the bicycle. It cannot. It doesn't have that capacity. The ego is just like that shadow. When we identify with that shadow, with the activity of trying to stop the shadow or grasp an experience, that activity is the source of suffering. And then suddenly our very beingness seems lost. It appears lost. That's why in the meditation I made some reference to what we've been longing for is who we authentically are. Jan, thank you. That was rich. I'm glad you wrote in. I see that something's happening with tech issues, so I will leave it to you all to work through that. I'm going to go back to one of these questions. Mimosa, I've been surprised by the strength of the inner critic during this lockdown time. It's tragic, isn't it? Here we are in a global pandemic, and the inner critic uses it as an opportunity to recharge, refuel, do its thing, attack. When it is a good time for compassion, reflection, gentle inquiry, there seems to have a lot of guilt, shame, and resistance. This was so helpful today. Mimosa, I'm so glad, most of all, I'm glad you can name that. It's really important to just see. I live with someone who does not like me. We're all quarantined with someone who does not like us. Now, knowing that, how can we learn to see, as Joyce said, how can we see that this person, quote unquote, that does not like us is a shadow? As Kiki's been working with, we can see who this inner critic has been beating up. That's really helpful. If we can see who the inner critic has been attacking, it naturally, often for many of us, ignites a sense of empathy and compassion. But then to see the nature of the inner critic, to see that it is a shadow is key. To see that we don't have to try to get rid of it or push it away. Just see it and then see the nature of it. So to be very concrete here, see what it's doing, see what it's saying. There's the inner critic. You're a lazy blah, 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 blah. I see that. Now see the nature of that inner critic. If I hear that voice, you're just lazy, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's real if I identify with it, or if I identify with the young part of me that it's talking to, then I will suffer in that. So see the inner critic, and then see the nature of the inner critic. See that it's a shadow. Notice that you're seeing that it's a shadow from the refuge of your very being. Feed that. Nourish that. Know that. Thank you. Appreciate you writing that in, Mimosa. Spencer, Crowdcast, message, try another browser. Okay, thank you, Spencer. Spencer, I think I've mentioned this before, but if you could do these tests with Jake, it would be so helpful, because I love, as you know, when people can come on screen, or maybe you've done the test with Jake and just for some reason now it's not working. But yes, friends, I do. I really enjoy it when I can have an exchange with you. So if you're willing, perhaps you could try these things, this test out with Jake, so that we could have more in-person dialogue. I'm happy to have this exchange just through the chats in the sidebar, and it's very rich when I can speak more directly and ask you questions. Jem, thank you for writing in. I always, though that my inner critic, I always thought that my inner critic, though it seems to dislike me, it is doing what it does out of some mission to actually try to protect me, or to actually protect me. Can this be the case? Trying to protect from failure, etc. Yes, Jim. So when we are young, the judge is born, if you will, the inner judge. The judge is born as part of a survival strategy. We're just trying to survive our lives. If I've learned that the way I can survive my life is just to get everything right. If I get everything right, if I do everything perfectly, then I'll be loved, I'll be accepted, I'll be taken care of. So you can see in the psyche of a young child, that all makes sense. We start listening to that inner critic. We start listening to the judge. It feels like it will help us survive if that judge then points out, well, you just did that wrong. But you can see how faulty this system is. That as a young child, it might have provided some sense of security. It might have felt as though it was protecting us. But it was helping us survive our lives. It wasn't helping us remember our inherent goodness, for example. A voice that's constantly telling you that you need to try to be good, try to be better, is not the voice that beckons you back to the remembrance of your inherent goodness. So just look in your own life now. Am I protected from anything by listening to the inner critic? We are not. We are not served by believing the voice of the inner critic. We have the capacity to have insight. That is helpful. The insight, oh, if I do this, it won't be skillful. Or the insight, I just said that wasn't kind. Those insights are different than the voice of the inner critic, which might sound something like, you're always so mean. Why do you even try? What a joke. You truly don't need the inner critic anymore, Jim. You never actually did, but it did provide, when you were young, some sense of security as you learned how to survive your life. Those survival strategies aren't guiding you home, though. Thank you, Jim. I'm so glad you brought that in. Sophie, thank you for offering this gift every morning. I hope to share what I notice with the question of what emerges from consciousness. Beautiful, great. Oh, friends, again, my screen wasn't scrolling, so I've missed some comments here. Sharon, I'm struggling with the idea that my being wants to engage with life, but my conditioned self blocks it. Is this a story too? Yes, your being is the engagement with all of life. It can be no other way. So it's true, Sharon, it's only the conditioned mind that suggests something otherwise. Thank you very much for writing that in. Ellen, perfect identification. Nikki, I'm finding the work on the inner critic beautiful and vitally important, particularly in these times, yet I find it really exhausting. I wonder if the fatigue is true for others. Great, Nikki. I would like to speak more. Let's focus more on what's exhausting about working with the inner critic tomorrow. I think that's a really important, there's something going on in terms of conditioned process if it's feeling exhausting. So Nikki, let's bring that into tomorrow's call. John, thank you for acknowledging that you're loving the image of we're quarantined with someone who doesn't like us. Yeah, good. Okay, so friends, thank you. I can see where we'll pick up tomorrow, and I really value the richness of today's call. Charlie, if you'd be willing to come on, I see you volunteering to come on. If you'd be willing to come on tomorrow, that would be great. Sandy, I'll be sure to read your question, which I didn't get to today, as we close out. And friends, thank you. I can tell there's richness here. So we'll pick up tomorrow, same time, same virtual place. All right. Thank you.